Oh, hey guys, David Burns with you. I'm pumped and excited today to give you some more beekeeping tips. And whether you're just starting out as a new beginner or you're an experienced beekeeper, I'm here to talk to both of you today. So thanks for joining me, stopping by my channel. Going to talk to you about an awkward situation that happened at my booth at Hive Life. I debated on whether to share this or not because I don't want to embarrass anybody or mention any names or anything, but it's a subject that I think it's time to address it and kind of get it out there where we can think it through a little bit better. There were two people at my booth and they weren't related, but they happened to be there at the same time talking, and one overheard the other. One person said something like, and don't quote me, I don't remember exactly, something like the order of, I don't like using chemicals. I don't want to treat and use chemicals in my hive to control mites. But the other person overhearing that said something like, that's not a good idea because if you don't, then you could have an excessive amount of mites that can affect my bees. And also there was a comment left in my YouTube channel that was really a wake-up call for me. I really debated on sharing this, so I'm not going to share the comment. Comments are public. You can go and look for it and read it, but I don't want to bring it into that much of a reaction. I just want to say that a bee inspector in Utah left a comment, and he said that some beekeepers in Utah were working with legislators to actually get it to where hobby beekeeping is prohibited, because hobby beekeepers often don't keep their bees healthy, and unhealthy bees are having an impact on commercial beekeepers that are struggling with varroa mites or diseases. He's a bee inspector, so I take him at his word that either he overheard some beekeepers saying that we need to get legislation passed where hobby beekeepers are pushed out so that we can keep healthier bees. Now, that's alarming. We never want to push out hobbyists. I mean, that's just alarming in so many ways, right? I think honeybee health is what we all want to achieve. The hobbyist, the sideliner, and the commercial beekeeper, as I said in my last video. There are times that commercial beekeepers or sideliners or hobbyists run out of time, they run out of money, life happens, and they can't always keep their bees as healthy as they want to. That's not just a group. That's not a certain sidelining group or a commercial group or a hobby group. I think we've all been in that category where I want to keep them healthier, but I'm out of money or I'm out of time or something came up in life. I had to have surgery, whatever. I just can't get out there and take care of them and nobody wants to help me. So we have that, right? I've kept bees a long time. In fact, I made a mistake. I misspoke in my last video where I said I've been keeping bees 18 years. Sherry said, you got that wrong. You've been keeping bees 28 years. So I've been keeping bees almost 3 decades now. And so I know the struggles that we all go through. I want to share something with you guys about the varroa destructor mite. A lot of people ask me this question, David, I don't understand where in the world the varroa destructor mite comes from. Is it out there on flowers? Does it reproduce out there in the wild on flowers? And then the bees land on flowers and they bring them back to the hive? No. Look, this might blow your mind if you're new to beekeeping or just not even knowledgeable about bees yet at all. The varroa destructor mite actually lives and breeds. Can you guess where? Where are they born? Where do they breed? Where do they live? Where do they eat? Where do they raise their young? Oh, right inside the hive. They live in the beehive. That's right. That's what they do. And how do they get into the hive? You say, well, how do they get into the hive? What if I start with a hive that has no mites in it? So if they live and breed and do everything in there and I don't have any, they got to be coming in. They got to be flying in. Well, they're parasites. They're mites. They don't fly. Guess how they get in there? On the backs of bees, other bees. Well, wait a minute. My bees didn't have any. If my bees fly out and forage and my bees come back, why is it that they're bringing these mites back into my hive? How does that happen? I mentioned in my last video that the possibility exists where a bee from your colony can fly out and land on a flower. But somebody that has hives 2 miles away, their bees could land on the same flower. A mite could jump off and jump on to your bee and come back to your hive. Mites even if you have a clean hive, if you kill every mite in there, it doesn't take long at all. In 30 to 60 days, your mite levels can be very high because of incoming mites on the backs of bees. Now, listen to this. It's not just your bees that are bringing in these mites. Other bees are coming in that have mites on them. Now, you're saying, wait a minute, David. Whoa, 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 whoa. I've heard you say that other bees from other colonies aren't allowed in my hive. Their pheromones are different. So why is that happening? That's true. When in a perfect world, perfect scenario, all the bees know where their home is and they only go there. Have you looked around lately? We don't live in a perfect scenario. You take a real strong windy day here in central Illinois. I got a bunch of hives. I usually keep about 20 or 30 hives here for videotaping around the buildings here. But, it's different than the hives that we use to raise our nukes or our packages. Those are elsewhere. But these 20 plus colonies here that are used as a YouTube studio, these bees that I work, they're usually lined up and close together. That is the worst scenario for your bees when it comes to Varroa destructor mite. Probably not the worst, but it's bad. Because what happens is on very windy days, my bees fight to get into the right hive. The wind's blowing them. I've videotaped it. Just see them kind of cute little hive here. They kind of start coming in. They want to make a landing, but here comes a puff of wind. Woo, they're gone, right? They're trying to get back, and the wind blows them. They're good flyers. My bees will try to fly at 25 miles an hour wind. It's way too strong for a little bee to navigate back to the same hive. A lot of times they just can't do it. And what do? They wind up landing on the bottom board of a different hive, and they get welcomed in. Well, they could have a mite on their back. So this drifting, we call it, is when bees want to go to their hive, but they drift. In our packaged bee yards, they actually are on pallets, 40 by 48 pallet, 4 hives on a pallet, row, and rows of bees on pallets, right? We've noticed for years that the colonies that are on the ends always have such more stronger populations from drifting. Those are going to be the hives that have higher mite loads because they have more bees coming from different hives that potentially are carrying those mites into those hives. Also drones. Drones, for the most part, they go out and mate with virgin queens in the air. And when they don't have success in mating, they come back. Oftentimes they come back to a different colony to refuel during the day. A drone really can't go up there at 10 o'clock in the morning and hang out in the air until 5 o'clock at night. They have smaller honey crops. They have a smaller amount of energy stored in them in their honey crop that they can continue. So they have to go back and be refueled by a hive. And oftentimes these drones are drifting to closer hives than their own home hive. And that's how a lot of mites just piggyback around from hive to hive to hive. But get in your mind, understand, mites reproduce and live inside of colonies, in the cells. They reproduce in the same cell as the worker bees are reproducing, right alongside of them in the sealed cells. So mites are in there. We're not really worried about them bringing them in, because that is going to happen, but they're going to come in no matter what we do. We can't put up any kind of door. We can't do anything about the entrance to keep mites from riding in on drifting bees. But do we really have mites that are using flowers as a bus stop? That is a real possibility, but I think those numbers, they've got to be small. Because here's why. Because if you stop and think about a parasite, that's what the Varroa destructor is. It is a parasite. It has to be on a bee because it's smart enough, it's intelligent to know I am a parasite that belongs on a bee because I reproduce in a beehive. I reproduce and raise my youngs in a cell in a honeybee colony. So when a bee lands on a flower with a mite on it, let's think about this. Would a mite really want to jump off? I mean, why? It's a parasite. A flower brings a mite nothing. There's nothing a mite can do on a flower, right? It doesn't it's not a parasite to flowers. So it just sits on there. Now, whether or not mites are thinking, hey, everybody, I just realized there's a big flower 3 miles north of here, and let's all take a ride over there and hang out, and we can get into a better colony somewhere. I don't know if that exists. Again, I find it highly unlikely to conceptualize that in my mind because it's a parasite. It's not really a world traveler. It wants to be on bees. So I don't think we're getting a lot of bees that are jumping off onto flowers. Does it exist? I'm sure it does. I'm sure they fall off. I'm sure they climb off at times. And they're going to wait for the next bee to come by. I think our biggest transfer of these mites that are in a colony that's highly infested to another colony is probably either drifting or when that colony gets robbed out. If you have a small, weak colony that is dying from a high mite load, usually it gets robbed out because it's weak. Big colonies rob out weak colonies. And most weak colonies are weak because of Varroa destructor, so those mites are heavy there. So now you've got other people's colony in the area that find a weak colony in the fall, and they'll go there and start robbing it out. When they rob out the honey, mites are jumping onto these bees that have foraged or robbed their way in here. And when the robbers fly back to their hive, they're carrying mites back there. I'll tell you what, friends, in all my years of beekeeping, wow, my biggest struggle has been the Varroa destructor mite. Now, for when I first started, I really thought I could go without treating my hives. I told you last time in my last video, I tried so hard to actually do some breeding of queens that were more mite resistant. I would go to colonies that were surviving in barns and all without being treated. I thought, okay, good, some stock that maybe is a little more mite resistant. And there's work being done that way. But when it comes right down to it, mites are relentless. You know, we can find a way maybe to make queens that are a little bit more mite resistant, although I don't think we're close to that being anything that is going to take us away from managing mites where we can just put all of our money in a queen to do it for us. I think we're a long way from that. And I think those of you that might be thinking, oh, good, I don't have to deal with mites because I just bought this queen that is mite resistant. And so that way, when I buy a queen that is proven to be able to control mites, I don't have to worry about mites because I bought a queen that does it for me. Don't go down that road. Don't think that way. I mean, even if the claim is made, even if they say it's more mite resistant, it just means that characteristics might mean you'll have less mites. But less mites can still be a problem because those viruses that might spread, it doesn't take a lot of virus infected mites to actually get into your bees to start spreading those viruses. So even at low thresholds of 3 mites per 100 bees, you could still have high virus loads that could cause your colony to fail. And that's what's frustrating. A lot of beekeepers tell me, I don't know why my bees died. I had plenty of honey. It wasn't that bad of a winter. I had a lot of bees in the fall going into winter. I kept my mite levels low going into the fall. Why didn't it work out for me? And so that's the struggle. Sometimes the viruses are so strong in a low number of mites that the infestation of viruses is what hurting bees, even though the infestation level of those mites that are carrying them are lower. Of course, use simple math. The more mites you have, the greater chance you're going to have more viruses that are going to take out your bees. All the struggles that I've had with my colonies through nearly 3 decades has been Varroa destructor. Mites are the real reason bees are struggling so much. Yeah, we have pesticides that are sprayed either by, agricultural applications or homeowners trying to kill bugs on their gardens and all. We have that pesticide out there that bees can pick up from a lot of different sources. And we have other issues facing bees today, such as poor nutrition, because we're losing a lot of the landscape, the natural habitat of floral sources. So bees are up against poor nutrition. They're up against more these pesticides that are around that they can pick up and take back to the hive, bees are up against a lot of new pests and diseases that are happening. That's no doubt about it. But that being said, if we could remove just one thing, if you had a choice to remove one thing, it should be the Varroa destructor. Because the Varroa destructor weakens the overall health of the colony through these viruses, making them less able to fight off the presence of pests and diseases or pesticides that are really having a detrimental effect on bees. That's my take on it. That if we can keep the mite levels low, it in a sense builds up our bees' immunity and ability to deal with the other pressures that bees are already fighting. I can't really control the floral source in my area because I really don't want to have to, I need to make videos. My bees have to be here. This is where I work on making videos for you guys. So I've got my colonies here. My colonies are my YouTube studio. And fortunately for me, they do have very good nectar sources. Now, do I have pesticides being sprayed in my area? Absolutely. I live near farm fields here in central Illinois. That's something I can't really deal with without picking up and moving, and I just can't afford financially to do that. But one thing that I can solve is the Varroa destructor. If I can cut down on the Varroa destructor, I can have healthier bees because my bees are healthier to fight and have more of a tolerance or maybe a resistance to any pesticides that they may pick up from farm fields around me. So that's why I'm really advocating that all of us find a way to really lower our mite levels. I don't think we should just reduce mites once in the spring and once in the fall. I think we should reduce mites all year long. I think we should take mite tests. I've always said that. That's nothing new. Decide your treatment or your approach, and not always a treatment, but some approach to reduce your mites based on doing that mite test. Now, I've always said, try to use integrated pest management without the use of medication for as much as you can. I shouldn't say medication, it's more like a method of treatment. But try to use a green drone comb to trap mites. Try to use a screen bottom board in combination with a green drone comb so that mites fall through and can't get back in. Maybe you can use powdered sugar dustings. That does work a little bit. Maybe you can break the queen's brood cycle. I've taught that for years. In July, August, September, if you break the queen's brood cycle for a week, you're going to break the mite's brood cycle for a week. And if the queen lays 1,000 eggs a day, and a week 7,000 eggs, that's 2 mites per egg. That's we're up to 14,000 mites that could be reduced. But I've made so many videos about this. But what I'm saying is there's easy ways that even if you're a natural beekeeper and you don't want to use treatments, there's very good ways for you to do that to control mites without putting treatments in. And for me, I've been successful in many of my colonies with this sort of approach. There are colonies, though, that I have at times that all at once have a big jump in mite loads that my IPM methods aren't really knocking down. And I get into August and I've got to get those mite loads down because I need to make bees of winter physiology. They can't have a high viral load on them. And that's when sometimes I had to pull the big guns out, like Apigard, something that can help me control the mites for a while. Formic Pro can really knock the loads down fast. Like if you have a high infestation, if you're in the 20s and 30s and you're just like, what am I going to do with all these mites? I gotta get rid of them. A Formic Pro approach can really knock down those mites fast. It kills below the cap cells too. A lot of benefits in that. I'm not promoting one over the other because I'm just saying there's different times and different reasons you want to use different methods. When your other more natural methods are failing, you may have to go to the big guns. Now, how did the story end at Hive Life? Both of them kind of agreed to disagree. One person felt like what I do with my bees is none of your business. It's not my fault that you have high mite counts. You can't blame me. There's other feral colonies out there that they could be going and robbing out, getting them from those colonies. You can't really determine if I have high mite counts or not, if I'm the problem. And as far as the Utah beekeepers that feel like hobbyists need to be prohibited from keeping bees, because they're a threat to larger operations. I think that would just be very detrimental to beekeeping. Totally, because like I've said before, hobbyists are beekeepers that are having a great impact on the community of understanding what bees are all about. We need hobbyist beekeepers for sure. All of us, whether you're a beginner and you're a hobbyist, or you're a sideliner, or you're a commercial beekeeper, we've all had hives that we've been managing, keeping the mite levels low, even with the use of treatments, and we failed. All of us have had treatments that didn't work, and the mite level stayed in the 30s, for example. So we all, it's not just to blaming the hobbyist. We've all had the times when we just couldn't keep the mite level low. So we're all battling the same thing. So just because you're a natural beekeeper doesn't mean that you have a hive that is what we call a mite bomb. And I know some people don't like that term, but it's a term used in beekeeping, and it's probably not the best term. But it's not a hive that just because you're a natural beekeeper that you're automatically just your hive is dirty because you're natural and you've got pests and diseases in there. That can happen. I mean, pests and diseases and high mite levels happens to hobbyists, sideliners, and commercial beekeepers. So before we draw a strict line in the sand and say, it's either and or, it's not. So maybe we just need to understand all of us are working toward the same goal, not the same way, but we're working for the same goal of keeping honeybees healthy. That's really important. By the way, this book, it's available on our website. My good friend John Zavishlock, PhD in entomology, wrote this book on pests and diseases. And if I've sparked your interest, I know you're maybe a hobbyist just starting out, but it's important that we know all about the bees, what's going on in there as far as pests and diseases, because it helps you keep better, healthy colonies. So be sure and check this out. I'll leave links in the description below. Also, Jason at Bohemian Bees gave me this at Hive Life, and it's something you can tack on. It needs to have a little nail right there. You can tack it on the front of this cute little hive that Brian at Castle Hives gave me. I'll leave links to the little baby hive in the description below. And for this, I'll leave links below. But this you can tack on a hive and put a nail right through the center. You can turn it. When I was first starting beekeeping, I put rocks on my hive. Like if the brick faced east, it meant it was queenless. If it faced west, it meant this. And that worked really good until somebody went out there and didn't realize I had those all set perfectly and mixed them all up. So this is kind of what this is all about. It's a marker to tell you the state of the queen. And so the blue one says this is a swarm. If your hive's getting ready to swarm, you saw some swarm cells, you can twist it to that. Turn it to green means everything's good to go. The queen is healthy and good. Here it means you have a supersede your queen cell. And over here, it's a yellow one, says you've got a virgin queen in there. And the red one says no queen at all. And so why this would be valuable if you had a whole bunch of hives lined up kind of close together where they're all drifting and robbing each other out and spreading mites. If you have them close together, you can just kind of from a distance look at the rows of hives and say, oh, this one has no queen, it's red. Oh, good. This one is green. It means the queen is okay. So you can tack these on and just turn the little wheel, and it helps remind you of the state of the queen. Okay, guys, I got some January tips for you. I know January is winding up, but this applies pretty much through several more weeks now. So be sure and check this video out, what you should be doing in the month of January. I'll see you over there.